Chair recognizes the member from Litchfield, Representative Bohm, to speak in favor of overriding the governor's veto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and respected colleagues. I rise today to ask you to vote to override the governor's veto of HB 603. HB 603 amends RSA 193C6, which speaks to the statewide assessments. The amendment simply clarifies the law by stating that a parent or legal guardian may exempt their child from this assessment, and that the child will be given alternative appropriate education activity, and that the child will not be penalized. The problem is that this is not a statewide assessment, but a federal assessment, and is not an assessment of the students, but an assessment of the schools. The federal government is mandating this assessment, and if 95% of the students do not take the test, then the school could lose their Title I money. For those that do not know, Title I money is money that goes to the schools based on the number of student families that collect food stamps. The more family on food stamps, the more Title I money the school gets. This is an empty threat. No school in the country has lost any money. Can you imagine the headline stating the poorest schools in the state will lose federal money? School districts in New York, California, Washington State, and others have had very low attendance taking the test, and some have refused completely. None have lost any federal money. The 95% number is a statistical number that is recognized as the norm. However, this is based on comparing identical items. The federally mandated test is different per student taking the test. Every student that takes the computer-generated test is given a different test. Questions are different per student. It is also an adaptive test, meaning that following questions are based on your previous answers. If different per student, then it is different for each school, so the 95% number is not valid, and would any percentage be valid? The test is faulty, thus no need for every student to have to take the test. Parents have always had the option to refuse the assessment on behalf of their child. Many parents exercise that option with the NECAPS test, and no one batted an eye. The NHDOE even stated the following in a memo for the 2014-2015 school year, and I quote, "State assessment policies place a great deal of responsibility on districts to include all students. Districts must juggle state requirements, student needs, and parents' wishes. Despite the district's best efforts, situations will arise that prohibit inclusion of every student. Extended absences, family vacations, significant mental and emotional issues, and parental refusals are but a few of the issues that are not entirely within the district's control." And this was from the DOE last year. And yet, we had school districts in the state telling parents that they could not refuse the test for their students. The Department of Education changed its technical advisory to state that the district's legal obligations must supersede parental demands that their child not take the assessment. Where in law does the will of the Department of Education supersedes the authority of the parents? So please join me in pressing the green button for parental rights. Thank you.
The question is on before the House is notwithstanding the governor's veto, shall House Bill 603 become law? State Constitution requires a roll call. A two-thirds vote is required. Members will take their seats. House will come to order. Did that backwards. House will come to order. Members should be in their seats. The question before the House is, notwithstanding the governor's veto, shall House Bill 603 become law? Chair recognizes Representative Shurtleff for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know how proud I am of this body. Mr. Speaker, if I know that this bill conflicts with the state accountability laws and jeopardizes federal funding for our schools, and if I know that educators and business leaders oppose this legislation because of the harm it could do to our economic competitiveness, would I now press the red button to sustain the governor's veto? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If you are in favor of having the bill become law, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed and wish to sustain the governor's veto, you'll press the red button. The chair recognizes Victoria Sullivan for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that the Constitution of the United States secures parents' rights to direct the education of their children, and if I know that this amendment simply clarifies the state law by stating that a parent or legal guardian may exempt their child from this assessment, as they have historically been able to do in the state of New Hampshire, and, Mr. Speaker, if I know that no state or local school district has lost any federal dollars, even in the case of significant dropout numbers, would I then press the green button to override the governor's veto of HB 603? Thank you.
The question before the House is, notwithstanding the governor's veto, shall House Bill 603 become law? If you are in favor of having the bill become law and overriding the veto, you will press